Guys, I quit. I'm finished. I'm only joking. Well, I might be finished, but I don't quit. Mainly because I know I'm going to be coming back and playing Renegades, and that I'll dip in and out of Destiny, especially when we get some of the event stuff coming up, the new exotic mission and things like that. But, as has been reported in the news and regurgitated in many ways, yes, there are a number of folks who are known in this community who are saying they're going to be taking a break from Destiny in its current state. Obviously, that doesn't only apply to content creators. There are a lot of folks in a similar position, which I'm actually a huge advocate for, right? When a game stops being fun, absolutely, it's time to take a break. This is actually a policy, if you like, that I've set for myself for quite a long time now. Going back even a few years ago, I would get questions about, why are you not playing Destiny 2 as much as other people? And it's because, frankly, I'd already realized that for myself. I'm one of those people who will play the game while I'm enjoying it. I'll engage with progression in Destiny while I find it fun. And once I feel like I'm kind of wasting my time a bit, I'll just go and start doing other things with my life, and I'm totally fine with that. And I think the more that players can embrace that mindset, the happier they'll ultimately end up being, right? That's my 2 cents on that. But what am I actually referencing here? Well, I'm not going to go into all of the explanations, but a bunch of high-profile creators, I suppose, have commented in recent days about why they're not currently playing Destiny 2. Just last week, Glad dropped out of the contest raid. Then over the weekend, Datto said, see you at Renegades, bye, for a little while. And my understanding of that is that it's partially related to the current state of Destiny 2. It's also related to community sentiment and behavior from some folks in the community at the minute, because one of my least favorite things about when Destiny isn't doing well is that there are a lot of people in this community that just start going at each other's throats for one reason or another. Ultimately, responsibility for issues with the game land in Bungie's lap, of course. Another high-profile exit, albeit temporary, but Grenada Jake over the weekend has essentially announced that he will additionally take a break, so naturally, some folks are hyping that up. Everyone's quitting. And yeah, it's kind of true, but like I say, especially folks who are invested in Destiny as part of their kind of livelihood, they are going to come back to the game, and some of them have said that, right? But it's clear at this point there's no real benefit in reiterating why this is happening. We already know that the game has significant flaws at the moment with the portal, progression, power, rewards, but also Bungie's approach to monetization, communication, community management, general management, game development. The list goes on. And so I would echo the sentiment from this thread right here. We absolutely need a state of the game communication as soon as possible. Bungie have kind of committed to doing some of that in that they've said they're going to be delivering a roadmap at some point in the fall before we get to Renegades, outlining the bigger sort of system changes and fixes that they plan for a bunch of the game's issues. And we have this kind of double-edged sword of, well, you need to communicate as soon as possible, but also they need to get that communication right and actually have a manageable plan for the changes that they're going to make. Otherwise, if Bungie promise things that they ultimately can't deliver, then the perception will once again be that Bungie have lied or failed to deliver on their promises. So I don't really envy the folks who have to try and scramble that together at Bungie, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it is desperately needed. And now that Bungie have shipped Ashen Iron and the contest raid, the epic raid, whatever it's called, I'm hoping that more attention can turn to the important planning for the future and effectively communicating that to players. So while I would like to say we should have already had that communication at this point, and I totally agree that we should have, I do think in the next couple of weeks, Bungie need to rally their efforts towards communicating what their plan for the future is going to be. Whether it's in a state of the game format or as a roadmap of what they can actually practically achieve. Now, if we get to a point where that roadmap drops and players say, yeah, I don't think that's going to cut it, then at that point, I really don't know where Bungie go in terms of actually improving the base game right now. I'm still reasonably confident that Renegades in isolation, right, as a piece of content that we engage with for a few weeks perhaps, it certainly has potential to be decent, but there's definitely a much bigger issue with regards to the ongoing state of Destiny 2. That's really where the bulk of the problem is. And that's the core of what Bungie really need to address here. So I'm hoping it'd be wonderful if it's this week. If not, next week, Bungie have to have a much more holistic conversation about where do we go from here? What have they actually analyzed as the pieces of feedback from this community? And how are they interpreting that feedback? Because that's a big part of it. You know, a lot of folks would look at the changes that we had in Edge of Fate, where Bungie went heavily back to power leveling, removing the kind of exploratory nature of Destiny and it feeling like a large, mysterious, explorable series of worlds and places. And they funneled a lot of the things that gave Destiny's identity into this very narrow, but also overly complicated series of systems, like the power system right now. Every time Bungie talk about the changes they have planned to it, your head just starts to spin. We're going to change this at power band, this to that at this difficulty with these modifiers on it, but if you take that off, this won't work like that. But then when you get to 400, the behavior of everything entirely changes. And Bungie having to do this ludicrous amount of tuning, which is all very iterative, right? These are kind of small steps at a time in different directions, sometimes going forward, sometimes going backwards. And it feels like that is really what Destiny's identity is now, this spreadsheet of complicated terms and conditions on how we actually engage with the game. And in many ways, actually, no, it isn't complicated, but it feels complicated because it's boring. So when you have to try and engage with it and understand that this change will affect you if you're at this power level playing this piece of content at a certain difficulty, people's brains just start turning off, dude. And that's a big part of the problem, which I feel like is one of the bigger things that is now biting Bungie in the ass, because not only is the portal and power progression right now a very narrow version of what Destiny's endgame can actually be, it's also just massively contrived and has created a legacy of problems which Bungie are having to fix. And because they keep trying to iterate on it on a bi-weekly basis, that's also consuming a lot of their resources and energy, right? Instead of Bungie saying, how do we fix the game in 3 months from now? They've got people spitballing ideas that will come a bit further down the road. And then they've got entire teams or groups of people who are trying to make changes that will land in, a week or 2 weeks' time. And those changes are just not big enough swings. The one thing I will say is that I think power progression and rewards, by the time we get to mid-October, based on what Bungie have said about that particular update, it's going to be a lot better than it is right now, with the exception of this power delta stuff that they're talking about. Some of the content that players are actually engaging with right now is going to get more difficult, potentially, based on that power delta change. So there's this other weird component where sometimes they take a step forward, but it's too small of a step. And then other times you have these far bigger steps backwards. And in a way, I think Bungie should just actually stop. There needs to be a level of recognition that these little steps forward and to the side and in a different direction are kind of a waste of energy at this point. And Bungie should pull those resources into, hey, how are we ultimately going to make an actually better version of this thing that will ship in 3 months' time with Renegades? It's not that far away now. So the energy should totally go there, as opposed to just rearranging the chairs, which is how it feels at the moment. We're going from one mess to a slightly different version of the mess. So ultimately, my point is that Bungie should focus their energy on the bigger changes, even if that means the next couple of months are really going to slow down, because I just don't think they're going to make the kind of impact they want to with the smaller changes. If indeed they do want to make the right impact, because sometimes even that's up for debate. The other point I'm making here is that there are a lot of people who are burnt out, and I think the best thing to do is definitely go ahead and take that break. My outlook on Destiny right now is I will be playing Renegades because that's the next big thing. I want to see what it is. Between now and then, we've got an exotic mission, we've got Festival of the Lost. Those are the only two things that really interest me, so I'll come back for a few days, or maybe an hour a week to get the exotic upgrades if they're good. Outside of that, I'll play Festival, try and pick up some nice weapons or whatever. And that suits me perfectly fine. I'm not going to sit and bang my head against the wall trying to get to 550 power for no reason. What's the reason for it? The more of us that adopt that kind of perspective, the better, and I know many of you guys already have. And in terms of creators moving away from the game, something else to keep in mind is that it's incredibly exhausting when this is, well, it's the majority of your life, right? If you're in that subset of people, the only things you ever really hear about are Destiny, Destiny's latest drama, Bungie's latest drama. And then there are people in the community who are just being extremely savage to each other for no apparent reason, to be honest. These problems are the fault of Bungie and not really anybody else. And that would extend to content creators, in my opinion. I know this might be an unpopular opinion, but content creators are just players of the game. We're all as capable of being wrong or having different ideas to other people as anybody else, right? Bungie are game designers. It's their job to get it right. If they choose to take the wrong pieces of feedback, which sometimes comes from content creators, then again, that's their responsibility. From me though, I'll be covering the game, I'll be covering the updates because there are people who want to know that stuff. I'll be playing, but nowhere near at the levels that I was a couple of months back, and I'll be here to see what Renegades is and assess it at face value to see whether it's the beginning of a better path forward. And we should also keep in mind that that is the best we can really expect from it, because like it or not, Bungie are not going to fix this overnight. They can, however, communicate, and there's got to be a better demonstration of their commitment to actually make this right in the future. So those are my thoughts. Whatever you're doing, spend your time in a place that makes you happy. Life is too short to worry about Destiny 2 if it's not fun, and it's as simple as that. Take it easy, guys, and I hope you have an awesome day.